All right, well, this is a little segment of Wet Your Palate. I'm Joe Wagner. I got Chris Fat Mario Rubio. We got a special guest today, Katerina Axelsson, and she started Tastry. And Tastry, we don't see innovation come along that often here in the wine world. What you've done is, I think, amazing. I've seen what you've started with and what you've grown into and where this technology can go. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what people can expect from Go With Your Palate?
Yeah, thanks, Joe. Thanks for having me. Our tagline at Tastry is that we taught a computer how to taste. That's the simple way of putting it, but I think what we're going to have a good time talking about is how an emerging technology is being applied appropriately and some of the benefits that different parts of the supply chain in the wine industry, different ways that they have used it and benefited from. And it all comes down to how are we anticipating and serving the customer and what they want, whether they know it or not yet.
While maintaining diversity, right, within the wine world. So because everybody is trying to go towards one style that they think is the most successful, but we need a multitude of different styles, and everybody has different palate preferences based on how they were raised, what they ate, that sort of thing. So getting this technology into the hands of consumers at the end of the day, I think will drive them towards more experimentation and evolution of their palate and in wine, and beyond.
And embolden the wine industry to lean into the diversity that is possible in winemaking.
We also talk about biohacking, right?
You got to stay to the end for that because I got excited about a Wolverine peptide that I'm going to start using, and then we'll see what happens to me in a month. I get my claws out.
That's it. Yeah, I can't wait.
Dive into AI and then Katerina's debating skills.
I think that you gave some great tips for emerging entrepreneurs on what skill sets they should have in their back pocket. I gotta get my hair cut, man. This is getting ridiculously long.
Are you growing your beard back out?
No, I'm gonna keep shaving for a little bit.
What do you think? Have you seen him with his beard and without his beard?
Yeah, I have.
She's only known me with a beard, actually.
I've seen you in other avenues, like the big cardboard cutout of you. I don't think you have a beard.
Okay, yeah.
You know,
the Bowen one?
The old school card. Yeah, that is true. I didn't have a beard. I had a scruff.
Yeah.
In that, but yeah.
They did that one life size. So he's 6'1".
Yeah.
220.
No, he's 6 foot, but 6'2" on cardboard.
Yeah.
Oh, she gave you
Look
6
at that.
foot,
she gave me 2 extra
6
inches.
foot, dude.
We need more women
Wow,
like you in
now
the
I
world.
know why you brought her.
I'm 6 foot in heels.
Well, that was the funny story. As I grew up as a young kid, my dad was always telling me he was 5'11" until I passed him up, and I was just like, "Actually, you're 5'9". But he was like, "I was 5'11" with my Tony Lama boots on." I was like, "Whoever judges height like that, you know?"
With my Tony Lama boots on. Yeah.
Okay.
That's it. Well, hey, girls get away with it.
Yeah. I guess they do.
I'm 6 foot with my heels on, right?
Yeah. I'm actually not 6 foot. I'm like 5'9" with my heels.
See, I don't mind. So guys have a big problem with this, though. I never understood it. Like, guys are like, I will not date somebody who is taller than me, or if they do, like, if there's like a 2-inch gap, they won't let their girlfriend or wife wear heels to be taller than them.
It's a big insecurity.
Yeah, I'm sure you know guys like this.
Yeah, I just don't get it.
I've never understood it.
Honestly, I thought it would be cool if you, like, were walking around and you had a girlfriend that was like 3 feet. Like, look, in high school, my first love.
Dude, you were dwarfed.
She was 5'9" and I was 5'4".
Yeah, she looked like a monster next to you.
She was not a monster.
She's a very attractive.
She's very beautiful.
Yeah.
Like everything,
Yeah, very developed for a young age.
Hourglass.
Yeah.
Kind of thing going on, but I was 103 pounds.
You showed
she
your
was
confidence.
Like 140.
You showed your confidence at 14 years old.
She gave me piggyback rides around school, and I did not care. It was all right. It was love, and I didn't, put the ego aside.
Well, you have those beautiful blue eyes, so it's...
Ooh, look at she's coming out with the compliments already.
Goodness, thank
she's
you.
trying to butter you up. She's trying to get those hard
Not
questions
at all. Not at all.
choked down.
Can we please introduce her now?
Okay. Yes.
Wait.
Oh my God!
I
Thank
just
you. Sorry,
wanna
you took my breath away.
I just want to start off by saying all I want in a guy is I just want him to be a billionaire with wings and laser beams for eyes. That's all I ask for. That's all any girl wants.
Yeah. All right. Well, welcome to another episode of Go With Your Palate. You got me, Joe Wagner, and my co-host, Chris Fat Mario Rubio. We got a very special guest today.
We do.
A woman I've known for years now who's developed some amazing technology. We have Katerina Axelsson. She's going to be talking about her journey to creating Tastry, which is a game changer from a winemaker's perspective, and we'll get into this. From a winemaker's perspective, you don't see technology come into this industry and really, it's not disrupt. It is an assistant that really helps streamline things. So it's going to be an exciting episode here. But Katerina, welcome to Go With Your Palate.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here. When I heard you had a podcast, I was very excited about hanging out with you when I'm doing the dishes and running. And no, but I mean, it's really fun to listen to you and watch you because you're so authentically human. I don't know how else to put it. And,
oh, thanks.
So I thought it would be fun to talk about things you don't normally get to talk about.
I think
podcast.
What's really cool about our podcast, I think our company in general, is that, and you can probably speak the same way, because you can be yourself.
Yeah.
Right? You don't have to answer to somebody. I mean, you might have somebody giving you guidance, and I have people giving me guidance about, like, maybe you shouldn't say that or do that. But, like, at the end of the day, you have the liberty to go ahead and do those things. And that is truly authentic, right? So, like, I don't mind that I have people that absolutely despise me. Mm-hmm. And having haters, I think, means that you're doing a good job.
Yes.
And that you are speaking your mind and you're being true to yourself, true to whatever craft it is you have. And so the podcast is a way for us to be able to show that. And I'm sure you do that every day that you possibly can. I mean, I've heard you be, a little angry,
spicy,
a little pushy, a little spicy.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then I've also seen you put the shine on.
Well, that's what being human is all about.
Yeah.
And that's what I love about America,
Yeah. It is, yeah, truly. Yeah, you should be able to be whoever you want to be.
Yeah, you can. So let's do it.
So yeah, let's start there, because we are going to get into the details about what it is you're working on and continuing to evolve, and I think it's really exciting stuff. But tell us about your upbringing, and before you even went to Cal Poly, like what were your formative years like? Because you got a fucking brain on you.
You really want to? You really? I don't know if you want this on your podcast. I grew up in post-Soviet Russia. I'm an immigrant. I don't know if that's
the reason I bring it up is because I think there's a resiliency that comes with that, and I think it's important for people to recognize that, right? It's not like people don't just become like very crafty in whatever they're doing and figuring out ways to get things done and have a mind that's very open to whatever it is. You could just say, like, I have a vision, like Elon Musk, great example, right?
Yeah.
He's got a vision and everybody's like, bullshit, can't be done.
Yeah.
He's like, no, I'm doing it.
I've learned not to bet against that man. I've
Yeah.
lost too many times, but
so, okay, post-Soviet Russia.
Yep.
You were born and raised.
Yep.
And at what age did you immigrate here to the U.S.?
I was 8, and I went to San Diego, so that's where I landed. So, I mean, I still have some of the culture in me. I think mostly what it brought was a lot of gratitude for what it's like over here, because you know what the opposite of it is. You know what I mean? So you think anything is possible, I think, after coming from post-Soviet Russia.
Absolutely.
Culturally.
And that's something that it's an issue I have with our current society here in the U.S. is that nobody knows hardship.
Yeah.
Like, I could say, I don't even know hardship, right? We've never seen war on our soil. We've seen a few attacks in my lifetime, but, like, nothing that's really been, like, jostling to my lifestyle, right? You've lived that. So I think that really does build character and appreciation for what America is, what it stands for, the dream that's here, and it's here for the taking.
Yeah, and it's sad because it's also making us weak. We were so who is it that had that saying? Strong men create good times create weak men create bad times create strong men.
Yeah,
we're in that cycle where we just forgot how good we have it. You know what I mean? And I think we need to remember it to keep doing
I
what we're doing.
completely agree. No, we really do. I mean, what part of that cycle are we in right now? I think we are in weak men create hard times.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I hate to say it,
Yeah.
but like that's where we're at. So who's going to stand up and defend? I mean, there was a recent stat. It was something. It's like 65 to 70, somewhere in there, around 70% of military age Americans are unfit for service because of physical or psychological issues.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's a huge stat, and maybe that's overdiagnosis. I don't know, but that's. I mean, you look at that and you're like, holy shit, we're not going the right direction. Mm-hmm. Anyways, I know we're not here to talk about that today.
This got deep really fast.
We do. We take these little tangents and we're gonna bring it back around. That's what we do here.
But yeah, so post-Soviet Russia, 8 years old, you find yourself going from quite a very different set of just the world, right, of what you're going through, to San Diego, arguably one of the most beautiful places in the country.
Yeah, we can argue that for sure. It's pretty great, and there was a lot of gratitude. I had a lot of gratitude there.
And did you get involved? Did you so chemistry is your background. Mm-hmm. And how did you fall in love with chemistry, or when was that?
I was an aspiring scientist. I wanted to be an inventor, and part of it was, I think, rebelling against the family tradition. It sounds very cliche, but my parents were in law enforcement and would hunt down terrorists, like Russian terrorists in the U.S. I don't know how much I'm allowed to say on the podcast, but that was supposed to be my path. I was supposed to be a crypto linguist and decipher codes and do that sort of thing. But I wanted to be a scientist, so I wanted to get my master's in bioinformatics, but I ended up. It's a very long story. I ended up going to Cal Poly and taking some wine making classes instead and paying my way through college by working in the wine industry. All right. So I did all the jobs except winemaker. I remember crawling into the tanks and shoveling out the grapes, the must. The
pumice,
The pumice, yes. It's been too long. And doing the scale house, but ultimately I ended up in the lab. And I have a weird brain in that I get into tangents, so this podcast is probably pretty great. And
you're home.
Basically I had an inspiration and I went down a 2-year rabbit hole while I was paying my way through college in the wine industry. And the inspiration came because I realized that language was very limiting when it came to describing wine and what you're experiencing. So I would listen to a winemaker or ownership or sales and marketing, and they would be saying things like, we need this wine, we need it to be more tropical, and the winemaker's like, I would try to make nature do that for me. Let's see how that happens. Or you'll be talking to a buyer, I'd notice, and it's kind of like the buyer's saying they want you to do this thing with the wine, and it's kind of like the draw on your back challenge, like they're saying one thing and then the winemaker's doing the other thing and the sales and marketing person's doing the other thing, and it just seemed like describing what you're experiencing in wine is really hard. Like our words are not as complex as the chemistry. So I thought, very young and naive and ambitious, I'm like, I'm going to objectify all of this, and I'm going to figure out the secrets of the chemistry, and I'm going to understand what's going on in the flavor matrix, and then we're going to use that to answer everyone's questions. So it was like a very lofty goal. And
that is a lofty goal.
Like PhDs and like experts in the industry told me it wasn't possible, but long story short, I ended up meeting, this is not a long, short story. I ended up meeting with like flavor and fragrance companies, executives at like Nestle and, Givaudan. And basically I learned that no one really understands how consumers perceive or communicate flavor. And there's a bunch of reasons for it, but what you can understand is how much people are going to like it and why. So I ended up making kind of like a Franken method that could teach a machine to look at chemistry like a human can. So machines look at one compound at a time. Try not to nerd out here, so bear with me. And one compound without context is irrelevant. Like benzaldehyde, right, is a flavor responsible for cherry in a red wine. We don't all describe all red wines as tasting like cherry, and it's not because of that one thing. It's because of the hundreds of other things in that chemical soup interacting to put that picture together. But machines don't. They do like panels, and I thought, what if we could look at all the chemistry at once, and when you pass it through a machine, it will pick everything up, and then we could interpret it with context by having the AI understand what those interdependencies are. So basically add context to raw chemistry. And so turns out that is how you do it, and all we needed to interpret these massive amounts of data was the AI application for it. And I can't tell you why you experience this or why you like this when these 700 other things in the wine happen, but I can tell you you're going to like it, and you're going to like it more than X, Y, or Z. And that is the most accurate way to do it, I think, because that's how we humans are experiencing it.
And it's individual, right? I mean, every human interacts differently with these wines and their personal preferences. But if you're able to categorize somebody's personal preferences, you're able to give them an idea as to what else they might like based off of that soup of compounds, right?
Yes, and in a not boring way, which is, I think, really important for the industry, because what I see other attempts at recommenders doing is they try to, because they don't have I think because of the technology, they try to filter you by tasting notes and put you in a bin as to what kind of wine drinker you are. So if you like Pinots and you rate a bunch of Pinots highly, they're like, oh, this guy's a Pinot drinker, we're going to give him Pinot, or maybe he's a big, bold red drinker or a cooler climate wine drinker or whatever it is. But the fact is you like all different types of wine styles. You just don't know because you haven't experienced all of them, and your limited data set is telling you that you like Pinots because the odds were you happen to like enough Pinots that you drank. So I just wanted to point out, what we don't do is put people in a bin. I think good recommenders require technology like this because it allows them to actually explore and experiment and grow as a wine consumer. So that is possible, and everyone's palate is capable of that. So if we could just guide consumers to have a more positive experience along the way, then they will eventually become an adventurous wine drinker. That's the way we see it.
Yeah, and that's how it should be. And I think your timing is perfect because, where in the past, it was the, call it the boomer generation, whatever. It was like the current older wine drinking generation. They relied upon the critics and the scores and kind of, some word of mouth, but a lot of it really came down to, I'm going to like this wine because so-and-so gave it a 95-point rating and it's lauded and whatever else. And I think there was a bit of ego also involved with like, hey, I've got this exclusive wine and you want to show it off to your friends. This next generation, and when I say that, I'd put myself in this, but like you're saying, like 40 and below, they want something that truly does not just taste good to them, but also reflects what their personal ideologies are, which is an unquantifiable piece, right? Everybody's got their own personal ideologies, but it needs to resonate. They want to know that there's truth behind the product more than anything.
Sure.
And so by having that piece of it, if you can have that piece, which fortunately we do, but then how do you get people to understand that there are a whole bunch of other wines that they may fall in love with? And you're able to individually cater, if they so desire, to, fill out some pretty basic information. If they so desire, they will be able to find a multitude of wines. I mean, how many wines do you guys cover?
Tens of thousands. It depends on the vintage. But, I mean, we've had 6 vintages now, so I would say at least 10,000 a year. But
So, let's go back to that real quick. So how... you guys are analyzing. Why don't you give us the process of what you're doing? So you're analyzing through mass spec and a few other
mass spec-like technology. What I would say is we didn't invent the equipment. We invented the way the equipment looks at the chemistry. So we changed the method within the equipment. But yes, we look at volatiles, non-volatiles, dissolved solids, even some spectral data in there. We just look at it differently, if that makes sense.
Yeah. But it can be catered to the individual, and then the recommendations. So if they have a number of wines or a number of palate preferences that they've put into the program, then it'll pump out a number of other wines that they may like.
That's right.
So are you still focused on this being a consumer oriented technology?
No, I mean, I would like to get there, but our core competency as a team and as a company, right? We have 30 people. We're very tech focused. We're very tech heavy. It's really on the technology, and I didn't want to go and raise $50 million and invest a lot of CAC into acquiring consumers. That's very difficult. We have enabled other companies with existing consumer bases to plug that intelligence of Tastry in and benefit from it quickly. And we do get a lot of interesting data and insight from that. But we actually started working on the winery and manufacturing side, and now we're kind of going back and closing the loop this year and focusing on how to sell all this amazing wine that's being made to the right customer base. So if you wanted to imagine like a simple way to describe what Tastry does, whomever you are who's using it, whether you're a winery or a retailer or a distributor, it's just one big giant virtual focus group of the United States, and you use it to run simulations for multiple realities. And it's just giving you visibility on this living, breathing body of consumers and preferences, and identifying where's that maybe needle in the haystack, where the customers that are going to like my wine. And then helping you kind of react to that along the supply chain, just to increase your odds of success, because it is a very competitive industry, right?
Yeah.
So
when you mentioned the focus group, is this the 248 million pallets, right, that you're going through? I was wondering if you could touch more on that, or how that sourcing went.
It's a very small focus group.
Yeah. Okay. If you guys really want to know, obviously we did not do a panel on 248 million Americans. This is how AI can actually do amazing things. What we did was, over many years, we ran actual blind tasting panels where we analyzed the chemistry of the wine. We had the consumers drink and rate the wine, all experience levels, sommeliers, newcomers, moderate drinkers, all of them. All demographics, all of that. We did all that right. Thousands of people, at least 4,000 people. So that was a lot of time and money. But we were focused in the trials on how much they liked the wine, which surprisingly is missing in a lot of research. If everyone wants to know what you taste, we were like, how much do you like this? How much do you like this more than this wine? Right? The importance, we feel like that is an important piece. And once we had that data and we trained our algorithms, we verified the efficacy of those algorithms, and then we launched this quiz that you were referring to, this recommender. And the reason we were able to do that, understand what consumers like without having them taste wine, is because we had this panel of people answer several hundred questions about foods and flavors they like that were unrelated to wine. So we asked them, do you like, I don't know, black coffee or dark chocolate or bananas or Pellegrino? And we found a relationship between foods and flavors they liked and grew up liking, and the chemistry of the wines they liked. So that meant we can bypass the tasting panel process and just, launch this 30-second quiz out on e-commerce sites or in retail stores, and we can understand with a very high degree of accuracy what you like, even if you've never had wine before in your entire life, which is important.
Wow. And now you're utilizing that that is the foundation of the AI that you're...
Yeah. Good point. So we have the real palate data. We have 3 data sets that allow us to do the 248 million American heat map. One is the actual tasting panels I just described. The other one is we launched this recommender, and it was on sites across the U.S. and stores on the East Coast, and we had zip codes and the quiz answers that these people had, and their ratings for wines, which would continuously get updated, and we had over 100,000 of those. So then we ran what we call a derivation of a Bayesian ridge to create a synthetic data set. So it's really cool, actually. Just bear with me. So we have these palates and these zip codes, and we are looking at migration patterns and some demographic data, and what the AI does is it fills in the gap with, okay, what do I think the palates are in this drift? How do I triangulate that? How do I anticipate what I'm missing in the data? So that whole data set with the synthetic data, the palate zip code data, and the actual tasting data is 93% accurate.
And you're accurate. I mean, I know you're accurate. We've seen the data, and I will say the first time you and I met, I did have questions about what you were doing. But like, I love hearing new stories and new technologies. And after the first couple times we met, I was like, no, there's definitely something here.
I remember that. I remember that really well because you were there for a very early part of our journey. I mean, we had just we didn't even have a software. I think we just had the output of the chemistry on a little screen that we created. And I just said, look, I need to talk to winemakers. I need to understand how much of this is relevant or usable, or what are they going to use it for? That's kind of where we were at. And I'm like, oh, Joe Wagner's a winemaker. I'm going to talk to Joe Wagner. And you actually, I mean, you were very gracious. You you didn't have to meet with me, but you met with me for 2 hours, I think, the first time, and you just sat down with me, and I said, hey, you're not going to hurt my feelings. Just tell me, do you like looking at the flavor matrix in a 3-dimensional space where you can see how the vectors are related to each other, and a vector represents a compound or a group of compounds? And you're like, no. You're like,
just said
you're
no.
right. No, I'm just, no.
Well, okay. Let me defend myself. First of all,
wow, dude,
the 3-dimensional, when you're talking about this, so
Yeah.
I immediately started thinking about and I was like, man, it'd be really great if you could get consumers to get into this world, right?
Yeah.
Imagine you put VR goggles on,
Yeah.
and you're like, okay, okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm just imagining your guys' meeting.
No.
And then you're like, no. But imagine you put VR goggles on. It's just
No, and then you immerse yourself into this flavor matrix, right?
Yeah.
And then you're sitting there and you're like, okay, I know my benchmark of whatever red wines is in here, right? And then you can kind of see all these other wines that are around. You can pick and choose and be like, okay, I want to try this, I want to try this.
Yeah.
That's what I started envisioning. But then I was kind of like, well, how do we use this for production?
Yeah.
And you've developed some amazing tools for production, and we've actually used your data. So we subscribe to Tastry, and I want to make sure everybody knows it's TASTRY. If you're looking it up online. But we subscribe to Tastry for analysis, and we utilize some of that data of our currently bottled wines to overlay with other data, which I know you're doing that as well, as far as consumer data like Nielsen and IRI, that sort of thing, so that we can kind of cross-reference our successes and knowing that what we're doing is truly, not just what I like and what the winemaking team likes to make, but also that it is something that the majority of consumers like. And so we've been able to utilize that data as a pitch to, say, a new account. Like if we're walking into a hotel chain, like say it's Marriott, we can utilize these overlaid bits of data and say, this is how it funnels down. And this is why this wine is the right wine for you to bring onto your list for whatever this next period is, 12 months or whatever.
Yeah.
And once, all people need in sales is one reason to believe in it. And then if it works, then they keep it.
That's right.
And generally speaking, it our wines, we fortunately have a profile and a style that people like. And so once a chain like that or a restaurant, even just an independent restaurant, is successful with it, they're like, no, that's a go-to. I've got my customers, they love it, and we're going to keep it on. But without having, a differentiator, a tool or an element that is completely unique that tells the story as to why they should have it, there's going to be another, 1,000 people coming through their door in the next couple 100 days. And so, it's if it's go beyond the deals, right? We don't like deals. We don't want to be playing on price. Be like, well, if you buy this much, you'll get 20% off. We like to actually just keep a stable business and know that we can make money, they can make money, the consumers are happy. At the end of the day, that's all, right? That's just nice, honest business. But what I found most interesting about what you were able to develop was how to assist a winery in some of the more rudimentary tasks. So the way that I try to simplify this is we're going to start blending Cabernet. And what we'll do is we'll go through all those barrels and we'll taste them and we'll grade them. And let's say we come with then we rack them into tank, and now we have, say it's let's simple math, 100, let's say 1,000 barrels, and then it turns into 10 components, right? Mm-hmm. Now those are all in tank. We can send each one of those 10 components to you. You run it through your lab, and you get us kind of a whole readout of each one of those and what the profiles are. Mm-hmm. If we really loved our 2022 vintage of Cab, and we knew that consumers loved it, and we said, how do we make our wine as our base blend as close to that 2022 vintage with the 2023? Mm-hmm. And what it takes out is a huge percentage of the work of us sitting there with pipettes and blending, just doing our bench blends. Yeah. So we can run it through and say like, all right, well now, and there are all these different levers, right? So you can That's say right. like, we want it to be 80%, 90%, or as close to as possible to the previous vintage. And it takes a lot of that guesswork out, and it actually works. So that's, I think, one of the most unique things from a production standpoint, where you're taking, what do you think it is, 70 to 80% of the labor out of the initial pre-blend, which is really, I think it's probably up there.
Yes.
Time-wise.
Yeah. At least the iterations that are cumbersome, we definitely can get you from point A to point B very quickly. Yeah. And I think the winemakers like that it gives them visibility, and they learn how to talk to the AI. I know that sounds weird, but they might see it's trying to do something, and they're like, oh, I know exactly like what this means and what I need to do to hit this wine style now. So it's kind of like a co-pilot, I would say. That's not how we started. We started by solving emergencies. That was how we got people, to try this and to trust us and to realize that it's just an interface and not that scary. But when the fires, when we had the fires in 2021, we earned a lot of goodwill there because we saved entire productions from smoke taint, and they were going to drop the fruit in a lot of cases, and they're like, here, tell the AI how to ameliorate this, and it would come back in like 24 hours with a recipe, and it would completely ameliorate all the damage and save millions of dollars of fruit. And they're like, okay, I'm open to trying other things now. That worked. That saved my job.
So sometimes it takes a apocalyptic event to have people change their ideology on what they're doing, right?
Definitely.
We're a very traditional industry by and large, and I love getting in and blending and working with the wines and whatever else. But if there's like a way to kind of hop, skip, and jump ahead and be able to get down to this narrow point and still have a whole lot of latitude on what that final blend is going to be like.
More latitude.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. It's actually more latitude. You have more opportunities, and you're cutting through the fat, I think is what I'd say. The efficiencies are there. You're able to better use your time, make better wines in the overall. And efficiency is where it's at.
I think that's one piece of it. I do think that there are other benefits from a consumer-centric perspective that are benefiting the industry. One, I'll give you an example if that's cool. One question I would get often when we just started out was, oh, well, isn't your AI just going to make everything taste the same? And I said, no, it's the opposite, actually. That's what the industry is doing just fine without my assistance. Thank you.
That's a good point.
I was, before the show, we were chit-chatting, and I was saying, it seems like on the grocery store shelf, a lot of the wines have like Instagram face, you know what I'm talking about? Like where they're all kind of starting to taste the same. Yeah. And there's a lot of direction from buyers or the industry to make copycats. So what happens is it's a very competitive industry, so I understand why people do it, but people will say, make me a Mayomi, you know, or make me an Apothic Red. And I'd be like, why? That's not the best reality in all these simulations at all. Yeah. Like that you have a unique terroir, you have unique fruit, you have unique chemistry. Instead of doing that, why don't you target the consumers that like that wine? And the wine can taste completely different, but the same consumers would like it, and you could make a much better wine that fits a white space that doesn't exist yet.
Yeah.
And so we have, I think, done our part to steer copycats away from that habit and into a new reality where you can lean into making a more unique, more interesting wine. And I think consumers deserve it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And another thing is, if you know what a white space is, that there's a market for something, you can lean into making more interesting wine instead of just being afraid of killing the golden goose, right? You can lean into it because it mitigates the risk of trying something new. And trying something new in the wine industry is important because the most successful wine labels on the shelf are black swans. Like, they're completely out of style for the kind of wine they are. They're total flukes.
Yeah.
So that's what you need to keep replicating. And also replicating Apothic Red doesn't make an interesting wine because we have a saying, and you see it in the data, if you make a wine that everyone likes, you get water. So don't try to do that, right? Like the bigger the circle of people that like it, like if you think of the circle as the base of the mountain and there's the peak, the bigger the circle, the lower the peak. The peak is how much people like it. So everyone might like a very popular wine brand, but they're not going to like it that much. So you want a sweet spot where enough people like it, right? Like a scarecrow has a tiny circle of people that like it, but they like it this much. Like, they're in love with it. It's a cult wine. So you want to find the sweet spot of how many people are going to like it and how much they're going to like it. That's how you
find that balance.
Lean into what is authentically you.
Yeah.
As a wine.
Yeah. I think it's a good point.
I love your analogies, by the way. It makes it like very
I'm trying. I have made a massive effort to try to explain all these complicated things in my head that I sometimes don't have words for to be able to communicate that better. So thank you.
No, yeah, it's excellent. You know, it does. And what I was going to say was what I've been hearing a lot, though, too, while we're here is AI. And when we were talking about earlier, and I thought you had an interesting story, if you want to touch more on that, what kind of led you here, because, and then also with the train ride, but then also, you know, Joe and I, as far as AI goes, you know, we messed around with ChatGPT.
I missed the train ride thing.
Oh yeah, please.
Oh no, I was just saying, just telling them how I think I ended up on this podcast. I was on a train in Maryland, and I saw you had a podcast, and I listened to the one on AI.
Oh.
I ended up in my algorithm or something. I don't remember.
Was that your first podcast of ours?
Yeah.
Okay, you went straight for the AI.
Yeah.
Where we were like quizzing ChatGPT, and it's just fucking garbage.
Yeah, ChatGPT isn't a good representative of AI. Yeah. So I'm like, wow, there's a lot we could talk about here. This is great. So.
And you're saying there's the strengths and limitations of AI, right, in this process?
Yeah. Well, I'm not an expert in AI. I have a lot of very smart people who built the AI piece of this. I created the chemistry piece of this. I know why it's different, what it does, and how to talk about it. And I definitely know what, the big AI company, like, I understand the nuances in the AI space enough to talk about it, I would say. ChatGPT, it's at a place where it doesn't have context. That's a big problem. You can't do that in the wine industry. It doesn't understand what it's doing. It's just regurgitating things and finding patterns, and it ends up eating its own garbage in the end. And that's the missing piece. That's why I didn't want to get on the generative AI trend and claim that Tastry is a generative AI company, even though it could get you a lot of attention and a lot of money, because there's a backlash against it. And the backlash is because you are not qualifying the information you are providing it. That's a hard piece that takes a lot of time and investment.
That's such a good point. I wish that more people understood it from that perspective.
Yeah.
That it's, garbage in is garbage out, right?
Yeah.
I mean, to your point. So, and I think people rely upon it as, I know some of my kids actually utilize it for studying. I'm like, I don't know that that's all true that you're hearing. They're like, no, it's AI. Like, they combed Google for this. I'm like, no. No, the internet. You can go on the internet and lie any day of the week, and like
That's right.
it may pick that up, and all of a sudden you got a whole different story.
Yeah, I think it identified the Constitution as a plagiarized document recently, or something like that.
I
It was
didn't see
crazy.
that, really.
Yeah. So.
I mean, there's got to be a backlash at some point. I know we've talked about it. Like at some point, we're all going to be like, hey, let's the free thinkers, so to speak, the people that are really wanting to kind of have genuine relationships and conversations and all that stuff. We're going to be on like the reverse or the opposite of a hippie commune at some point. We're like, I see that in our future where it's like, no, we want to get away from the technology now. Like but I mean, it is a very powerful tool, but it is only as powerful as the information that is fed into it.
Yeah.
And I think that, to your point, how you're using AI is very different than how I think people perceive the benefits of AI.
Well, it's like fire, right? Like you can do amazing things with fire. You could also burn yourself with it, right? And so, I mean, look, we couldn't use that technology because it's not accurate enough, and like I said, there isn't enough context. But I mean, look, there are benefits, and people don't always take advantage of the benefits the way they're supposed to. Like this is the case with all technology in history, right? I mean, the internet gives you access to the knowledge of the history of the world at your fingertips in seconds. You can obtain a lot of valuable information. That's not what the majority of people use the internet for. So there's a smaller percentage of people who become better and stronger and faster because of technology, and there are people who become dumber because of technology.
Unfortunately, I think the latter is the more common.
Of course.
It's really a sad thing to see. Our society kind of declining into assuming that technology is going to be what sustains us, and then what are we all, just a bunch of blobs, and then we're living in the idiocracy.
Right.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think human communication is the thing that is just killing me that we're losing. Just the directness, right?
Yeah.
Like there's just so much technology in between us now.
Yeah.
As far as if it's social media or it could be email or something like that. But I know these things are relevant. I mean, they help us to be efficient. But also just the fact of like you can't really even go into a doctor's waiting room anymore and just have a random conversation and learn something from someone that you don't know, right?
Yeah.
Everyone's,
Yeah, that's
on
it.
their phone.
Yeah. Well, and now it's almost awkward, right? I mean, we've talked about it before. It's almost awkward when you walk up to somebody at random or just turn over to them if you're in a waiting room and say like, "Hey, how's your day?" They're like, "You trying to pick up on me? Like, what are you gonna jump me after this? What's going on?" Yeah. Like, I'm just striking up a conversation.
This is how we used to do it
Back in my day.
Is anyone gonna read these magazines?
When did I turn into an 80-year-old? I'm like,
Is this really the end? Unbelievable. Find out next week.